Oh, hello. I didn't hear you come in. Yes, it's me, Madame Strangeways. It's so good to see you. Today, I've got 2 new true strange stories for you. A haunted house and what may turn out to be a mimic or doppelganger. And as always, solicited or not, usually not, I share my thoughts and observations after each spooky tale. Now, it's time for you to dim the lights, get cozy, and maybe even get yourself a little snacky snack while I read you these true strange stories here on Madame Strangeways. Story number 1 by Jynxsy. I will preface this by saying, every time I tell this story, I get goosebumps, even 23 years later. I think I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I was at my older cousin's house for a visit during the summer. It was going well until the second night. Before I get to the happening, I need to try and describe the house. The house is situated in a rural area outside of Chilliwack, British Columbia, surrounded by cornfields and a small property that housed an abandoned home directly behind. The house itself I would describe as a modern plantation-style home with a ground-level wraparound balcony. When you look at the house from the road, the glass-paned doors is in the center with your living room window to the left and the bedroom I was staying in to the right. When entering the home from the front door, there's a large staircase directly in front of you. It is an open staircase that allows you to see the walking area upstairs. There are 4 bedrooms on each corner of the upstairs, and the bathroom is in the center. After a day of play in the field behind the house, my cousins and I ate dinner, watched a movie, and headed to bed. I was the only person sleeping on the main floor. I can't remember what time it was, but I was jarred awake by this heavy feeling that someone was watching me. I remember being tucked into the wall under the window, and so when I awoke, I looked up towards the window. And that's when I saw a figure standing there outside. All of a sudden, there was a rap, rap, rap on the window, and I freaked out and pulled the blanket over my head. Silence. But then the rapping came at the back of the house, the kitchen sliding door. There's a washroom attached to the main floor bedroom, so I ran into there and hid in the bathtub. That's when the banging at the window started again, but it wasn't exclusive to my window. This person or thing was banging on every window in the house, and it was moving around the house way too fast to be human. I don't know why no one else in the house couldn't hear this, so I decided to make my way to the upstairs to try and wake someone. When the thing started knocking at the back of the house, I sprinted for the stairs. And this is where I freaked out the most. As I was halfway up the stairs, the most ear-shattering banging on the front door glass happened. I looked behind me as soon as I made my way up the stairs, and this thing was just a shadow just standing there, but the banging was prominent. I got to my cousin Rachel's room and shook her awake, crying. We laid in bed, listening after I explained what happened. And we heard Nothing. Was I crazy? She told me to go to sleep, and she fell back asleep herself, but I just could not. And then it happened again, but this time, it was just a small tap, tap, tap on the front door, just enough for me to hear it, as if to say, "You're the only one that can hear me." We never figured out what it was. I told my aunt, and she couldn't even explain it either. But I believe we stirred up something at that abandoned house. We never did go in, but we definitely tried. I took my fiancé to the house a few years ago when we were visiting family. We took each other to see the places we remember growing up in. It's still there. It's still creepy. As I recounted the many good memories and finally this story, the big willow tree in the front yard kind of moved. But there was no breeze at that moment. And that is when I knew that no matter how much time has passed, people are never forgotten. Jynxsy. That was so scary. That was just so scary. Like when the knocking is happening all over the house at the same time and it's moving around and it's impossible for a human to be moving that quickly. That's so terrifying on like a few levels, because the first level is like, okay, if this is a ghost or a spirit or an entity or a demon, etc., what have you, and they're torturing you, just you, not your cousin, not your aunt, just you. Sure. Okay. that is scary. Here's another level where it's scary, is that there are enough humans surrounding the house and they're all synchronized. They've synchronized their watches. They're all in on it and they're all trying to, I mean, for lack of a better word, trying to scare the shit out of you. That's also really, really scary, especially, when there's like woods that backs up and, then that weird abandoned house that I would have tried to get in it too. So if I was there with you, I would have been haunted right along with you. Oh, sorry, cornfields, surrounded by cornfields, not forest. Wow, that's also scarier. Because now, third level way that's terrifying, aliens. I recently rewatched Signs. That movie is still scary. So it could have been aliens. I know I've talked about knocking before. This woman who wrote in was sick and she just felt like something was wrong. And this knocking started all over the house. And I think it happened for days while she was sick. And it was constant. And it was coming from even inside their walls and from inside the home. So like it couldn't just be from outside. So first of all, just that kind of knocking is so scary to me. It's like top 3 spooky story chills for me. But in that episode, I was talking about tying that back to the knockers, or, the Tommy knockers, or just in Welsh, Scottish, Irish, English folklore, knocking signifying an omen. It's an omen for death. But that's not what was happening here, because your story didn't say, oh, and then, 1 week later, Graham died. So I presume everybody survived shortly after. So I'm glad Graham didn't meet her grisly end because of an omen. So that's good news. So if the knocking wasn't signifying death, it wasn't an omen, it wasn't a portent of doom, presumably, then the first thing I thought was, are there mines nearby? So I Googled Chilliwack and I saw that it's in a valley. And if there's a mountain nearby, which there must be, because otherwise you don't have valleys without mountains, right? So if there's a mountain nearby, that must mean there's mines nearby. And in fact, when I looked up mines, Chilliwack,
It did come up with some mines. I didn't see anything hugely historical, but I'm going to be honest. I was distracted by the fact that Chilliwack has a corn maze, which is almost as terrifying as having knocking happening all around the house at the same time and no one else can hear it but you. So were you near the corn maze? Because I feel like there's a non-zero chance that corn maze is haunted. Okay, coming back to the mines though, the mines. If there were mines nearby, the knockers, the Tommy knockers, they both derive from these purported creatures or entities, sprites, etc., that lived in the mines and would knock either as a well-intended warning or as a less well-intended threat to the miners to get out because there was an imminent mine collapse. So, you are near mines. There could be some mine tomfoolery afoot. Tommy knocker foolery, if you will. And then the weeping willow kind of gently waving as if to say, I remember you. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Like, okay, calm down. That's unnecessary. Like, there's no way, Jynxsy, there's no way that you're ever going to forget this. So if they could just forget, if the land and the ghosts and the tree could just lay off.
Story number 2, First Paranormal Encounter by Ted. I've had many paranormal encounters, starting from my teenage years, intensifying in my early adulthood, and seemingly tapering off now that I'm in my late 30s. The first experience that I remember was in 9th grade, coming home from school. My parents were both working, so usually I'm home by myself until late dinner. I usually get the rice started in the rice cooker and thaw the meats. This afternoon, I was extra tired from wrestling practice, so I was relieved when I came home and heard rustling in the kitchen and the faucet turning on and off. I didn't actually look in there to see who it was, but I assumed it was my mom because sometimes she'd get home early from her restaurant job. Sometimes they have private events and they'd send some waitstaff home. I turned the corner to the bedroom and yelled out to her, "Can you wake me up in like an hour? I wanted to study for a test tomorrow." I heard her say, in a raspy voice, "Okay, Con." Con is a Vietnamese term addressing your own child. I thought nothing of it. Maybe she's feeling a little sick. I woke up from the landline phone ringing. Cell phones in the early 2000s were available, but we were poor, so only the adults had them. It was my mom asking me if I wanted the leftover food from the restaurant. I told her, "Did you go back to the restaurant for leftover food?" She said no, she's been working the whole time. Chills ran down my back. It was twilight and the sun was setting, so the whole house had an eerie semi-darkness to it. I told my mom to hurry up home, please. I did not lock my bedroom door so I could see out into the dark hallway. I jumped up to go lock the bedroom door and turned on the light, opened the window and turned on the radio, anything to drown out the silence and the dark. Eventually, my dad got home first. I was so relieved to see him, but didn't know if I should tell him what happened. I waited till dinner time to slip in casually that I thought Mom was home earlier and was doing something in the kitchen. She denied it, and they concluded that I must have imagined the whole thing. But I know I didn't. Someone was in the house, rustling in the kitchen, turning the faucet on and off, and imitated my mom's voice in its raspy voice. It called me Con, so my first thought was that it understood Vietnamese. No relatives we knew were going to come over, nor did they have the keys to the house. To this day, I still don't know what it was or how it mimicked my mom. It wasn't the only spooky thing that happened in that apartment, but it was the first and spookiest. Ted, thank you so much for giving me permission to read this horrifying story. Thank you. There's something creepy just about liminal spaces. I think we can all agree that liminal spaces are kind of spooky, just in general. So when you take a nap as a teenager, you wake up, you're disoriented, and then in your case, like the sun is setting, and there's just a weird liminal aspect to it. So that's already creepy to begin with. But then you heard something mimic your mom. And by the way, I looked up pronunciation of the word con, which I said con. Please forgive me if it was wrong. But hearing your mom's voice, on one level, you would expect to hear your mom's voice if you heard her in the kitchen, you heard things moving around in there. But so even if it was like a raccoon, if a raccoon got in your house and it was making noises in the kitchen, it wouldn't say anything to you. It would not use a human voice. So I think we can probably discount raccoons, although maybe if you heard something that was not likely, I don't know. I just don't want this to be true. So I'm trying to figure out a way in which it's not true. So moving forward, you heard what sounded like your mom's voice, though a little off, so not perfect. So I don't know if everyone's hearing this kind of when this was released at this point in September of 2024. Mimics are huge right now. They're super hot right now, and they're all over TikTok. And I think mostly it's the TikTok of the girl recording from inside her room with the door closed, hearing her mom talking to her through the door, but her mother is not home. She knows her mother's not home. She knows she's home alone. So who is it? Who was phone? Who was talking to her from across the door? So that is the concept of a mimic, is that you are hearing a loved one speak. This is similar to a vadoga. Oh, I practiced it for the last time. I don't know about this time. It's a Finnish folklore concept. So where you'll hear the sounds of someone doing something before they do them. So that it kind of sounds like what you're dealing with here, except it does just feel a little bit more ominous, like the voice not sounding right. Typically, you can't tell the difference when you're dealing with those sorts of things, especially a mimic. So what was it that talked to you? What was it that went into the kitchen, was trying to make you dinner, and then didn't make dinner, didn't thaw the meats, didn't start the rice cooker, but scared you, but let you nap though? So how malicious or ominous could it be, really? If it lets you get your sleep, you needed your beauty sleep, but it could have started dinner. It could have done something to help around the house. I am a big proponent of creatures that haunt your house, spirits, ghosts, shadow people, mimics. If they're going to hang out in your house, they need to pay you a portion of rent or do something around the house that's useful. I do love, though, classic parents where they just brush it off. They're like, oh, it's nothing. You're obviously imagining it. I'm sorry that they didn't listen to you. Although I would be interested to hear if any of the spooky things that you said happened to them. And if either your mom or your dad ever acknowledged the creepy stuff that's happening in your house. I did look up Vietnamese folklore, Vietnamese creatures, cryptids, ghosts, spirits, etc., trying to find something similar to a mimic or similar to a doppelganger.
And I came up empty-handed. So if there is one, I would love to read more about it. And also, by the way, for anyone playing D&D, these are not the same kind of mimics. You don't need to roll for initiative or whatever you would have to roll for a mimic. I don't know, but you don't have to. So put your dice away. I'm sorry. Put your die away.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can feel afraid and not be in danger. Please remember to like and subscribe. It means a lot. Until next time.